So hello, my name is Natasha Lance. I'm the Executive Director at the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, otherwise known as CNS, because that is a mouthful. So this evening, I am going to do a little bit of housekeeping with each of you to make you feel welcome and to feel at home here. So for those of you who may need closed captioning, if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a CC. Click on that, and then you will have captions that will appear on your screen. For those of you who have questions throughout this evening, please drop those in the chat. I'm going to be going through the chat and I'll compile a list of questions to ask to our presenter at the end this evening. And for those of you who have to leave early or want the replay sent to you, everyone who's registered this evening will receive the replay 1 week from today. So check your inbox. Also check your spam folder. It often ends up there. So be sure to check there as well. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. Michael C. Hollie. He is the chair of CNS's Medical Advisory Board, and he will be introducing tonight's guest speaker, Dr. Dawn Mussallem. And the title of tonight's session is The Heart of the Matter. Nutrition is only one piece of the puzzle. So, Dr. Hollie, take it away.
Thank you, Natasha. It's great to be here for Spotlight on Health, sponsored by the Center for Nutrition Studies. And our guest tonight is Dr. Dawn Mussallem. And I will tell you that I've been looking forward to this interview. Her story is, amazing is an understatement. It's more than amazing. It's a story of resilience, a story of attitude and purpose and gratitude and all kinds of things that make up our health. So Dawn, I'm just going to give a brief introduction and then we're going to talk some. So Dr. Mussallem is a consultant in the Division of Hematology Oncology at Mayo Clinic and assistant professor of medicine. She is a board-certified lifestyle medicine breast specialist at the Robert and Monica Jacobi Center for Breast Health. In 2015, she founded the Integrative Medicine and Breast Health Program at Mayo Clinic, Florida. Dr. Mussallem serves as a medical director for Mayo Clinic Florida Employee Well-Being Committee, medical director for Humanities and Medicine, and is a counselor at large for officers and counselors of Mayo Clinic staff. As a stage 4 cancer patient who was diagnosed just 3 months into her medical school training, Dr. Mussallem has a unique personal connection to her work. In 2021, she became a heart transplant recipient, and on February 6, 2022, she became the first person in the world to run a full marathon 1 year after receiving a heart transplant. Welcome, Dawn. We are so excited to have you here tonight to share with our CNS audience your story. It's packed with all kinds of learning pearls, and we're just excited to have you share with us tonight.
Oh gosh, thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for having me, and Centers for Nutrition Studies and Natasha for helping to organize this. I'm really privileged to be here, and I use Center for Nutrition Studies resources every single day, multiple times a day in my practice, and even for my own personal health. So I thank you for the dedication and the hard work that you have put forward to help patients like me and professionals like me really help to, attain that vitality and flourish via the whole food plant-based medicine, food is medicine movement. And we have a lot to thank Dr. T. Colin Campbell for
Absolutely.
The foundation of our science that we practice upon. So I'm very grateful for your work. Thank you.
Great. So Dawn, start in your childhood, because there's some pearls in your childhood but that are unique, and I want you to kind of start with your childhood and then kind of march forward. Don't forget to talk to us about the Smucker's jar.
Oh goodness, this is my favorite. It's so funny. When I started sharing my story, I would share this piece and I thought, maybe people are going to think that's kind of silly. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But there's such authenticity to it. So true story. As a kid, you go up and you ask a child, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, honey? my immediate answer to people would be, I want to be on a Smucker's jar. And they would usually kind of look at my parents like, what's wrong with your kid? And then I would also say I want to be a doctor. But the Willard Scott Today Show would celebrate the 100th birthday celebration. And they would feature this 100-year-old individual that was just like beaming with vitality. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And so from a very young age, I was determined to try to retain my youthfulness and to be healthy. And it was actually kind of interesting. And I don't really know if on other interviews I really talked much about this. When I was about 5 years old, this is just a little bit after I'd had this vision of wanting to be the healthiest person in the world and really love this concept of health, my brother became very sick, my younger brother, and he had epilepsy, and he was treated by a natural doctor that used a lot of very holistic therapies, including, food as medicine way back then. And this doctor's practice was conjoined with a health food store. And I am not kidding. One of my favorite memories as a kid wasn't going to Disney. It was going to that health food store and opening up the whole grains refrigerator section. It's not like this nowadays in health food stores, but you'd open up the whole grain section and the whole thing would smell like this fresh oatmeal. It was the most beautiful smell. So that was my favorite childhood memory, going to a health food store. So growing up in elementary school, junior high, high school, I prided myself with always eating healthy. On field trips, I would take spirulina bars when my friends had Snickers bars, and I would be reading health and wellness magazines, including, as we were joking about, journals from Linus Pauling, who is kind of the first researcher on vitamin C, and life extensions with how could I live to be healthier. So I was really passionate about this and went on to undergraduate studies to study nutrition and exercise physiology at Ohio State. And then from there, I actually went on, this is a cool part, to the Cooper Institute for Aerobics Research in Dallas, Texas, with Dr. Kenneth Cooper. And I did research on 100-year-old centenarians that were still running. And we were looking at their muscle mass and why it was that they were still able to have this high functional capacity, both cardiovascular wise, as well as from a physical standpoint, to continue with that high level of physical activity. So that's kind of how my early years mapped out. And then that was my springboard to medical school. So you want me to keep going?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, tell us quickly about your parents, what your dad did and mom did, and all that. You talked about that you were born a happy child.
I really was, and I get this question because I have had several various elements in my life that were of significant adversity, one would say. And I got through those with grace. We'll talk about grace a little later. Yeah. And I think there's multiple levels and reasons why. One is just deep love for my family and deep faith in God. But, I'm just so joyful. I have such love, peace, harmony, and happiness. Like, I just love life and everything about it. And I was born that way. I was just kind of born this beaming kid that was always happy. Nothing got me down. But my mom remembers, she tells the story. Oh my gosh, I remember the day that I conceived you. I remember being pregnant with you. I was just so happy. And so I think that's important for pregnant women. Our DNA, we start as fetuses in our mom's womb. And so those thoughts and the way moms eat, all of that starts to influence epigenetics. And so I wonder if that's part of it. My mom was just so joyful, welcoming, accepting, and filled with love over the fact she was pregnant with me when I was in her womb. And then sure enough, here she has this very happy kid that it just never got turned off. Nothing got me down. It just was like that as a child. My parents were very healthy. I was born into the right family, that's for sure. They wanted to be sure I could fill my dream of being on a Smucker's jar. So, and then my brother's illness really pushed forward the fact that health was just going to be something that my family and I were about. So I was a competitive gymnast growing up. I was a big runner. And so that was part of my physical activity commitment to wellness. And then, of course, we ate a whole food, plant predominant diet. There was occasional animal protein, but we were primarily a whole food, plant predominant family. So it was really in alignment with everything that I did early on, all the way into my undergraduate studies.
And that was back when whole food, plant-based eating was not very well known or very popular.
That's exactly right. I mean, this was before its time. It was kind of like
Yeah.
we should just do what our great grandmothers did. Eat closest to the earth if possible. We always had a garden, so it was really exciting. The one thing, I was kind of a tomboy. I mean, I remember I'd pick berries and grapes off the garden, and I go tread in the creek behind my house. We lived in the country, we had a big yard, and I would just play in that creek all day long whenever I could. As soon as I got home from school and on the weekends, all day long, I would just be out there in the water playing, looking at little crawdads and things like that. And that water actually could have been a problem because it was a runoff from crop fields. So who knows, right?
Yeah.
So, I go on to medical school, and it's interesting. I applied to one medical school. It was the Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's the only medical school I applied to. And a lot of friends said, that's kind of risky. You should probably apply to more. But I was like, no, this school is really aligned with my vision of wanting to do really holistically aligned health. And they had a really strong nutritional curriculum. And so it was a perfect program for me. So I went on to osteopathic school, very fit still all this time. Was climbing Camelback Mountain twice a day. Actually, I would do Camelback Mountain, sometimes up, down, sometimes morning and night. I just was really into this stuff, loved it. So a few months into medical school, I started not to feel good. And I went to see a doctor, and he says, oh, you have asthma. He never listened to me. And he said, here's an inhaler, use it. So I did. And my symptoms continued, and saw another doctor, different doctor. And he said, use your inhaler more. It's just like, okay. And I was starting not to feel good at all. Like at this point, I couldn't exercise. At this point, I could hardly go up this flight of stairs. And here was someone that was going up and down Camelback Mountain, which is a really steep, really challenging climb in Phoenix, Arizona. And so my symptoms continued to get progressively worse to the point that I really couldn't walk 10 feet. And I saw a third doctor, and he said, this is in your head. It's psychosomatic. It's something that happens to all medical students. And I was beating myself up emotionally, like, toughen up, man. What's wrong with you? This is not like you. You need to get a grip, that kind of thing. Like, holy cow, girl. And so a few days later, I'm going home from class, and I collapsed. And so I was taken to the emergency room, and they did imaging, chest x-ray, and it showed that my complete lung was collapsed. There was a large tumor that was wrapped around my heart, and it was pressing on all the major vessels that bring blood back to the heart and pump blood out of the heart. So the blood was basically congested, and I was in more or less a cardiogenic shock because the heart was not properly beating, and that's why I had passed out. So they had to take me to urgent surgery. They did a thoracotomy, which they open you up from the side to try to pull that tumor off the heart, to try to tumor off the lung. And it was a very long, complicated surgery. And I remember coming out of anesthesia after the surgery, and there was a medical student from my school. It gives me chills to say this. And she was sobbing, just like sheets of tears. And I remember saying, it's going to be okay. Like, I felt like I had to soothe her. I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to be fine. And then I see this fear and worry in everyone, but no one said anything, so I thought, I'm just going to shut my eyes and go back to bed, So the next morning, this is actually, let me give you the date. So this was November of 2000 is when this was. This was Thanksgiving week, leading up to Thanksgiving weekend. And so the next day was actually Thanksgiving. So it was an on-call doctor, on-call team that came into my hospital room. They said, we have news to give you. You have diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. It's a stage 4 cancer based on the imaging. And you have 3 months to live without treatment, about 20 months to live with treatment. You're going to need to drop out of medical school, and you'll never be able to have children. And we don't have time to do fertility preservation. And I was like, what? My dad was sitting next to me thinking, what on earth? Like, what did we do wrong? How does this possibly happen? How do I protect my little girl? I was 26 at the time, but still. And, it just triggered like this autonomous motivation for me to take control of what mattered. And it was staying as close to my goals and purpose in life. And that was medical school. I didn't have any kids. I was not married at the time. It was keeping my life as normal as possible. So the following week, I met my actual doctor, who was no longer this on-call doctor. And I had actually an icon of Jesus that was sitting next to my bed. And I remember him looking at that saying, He's the only one that really knows the answer. I'm going to be by your side, and we're going to fight as hard as we need to. It's going to take many months of chemotherapy. We're going to recommend that you have a bone marrow transplant, and it'll be followed with radiation. And so that's exactly what happened. You know, I stayed in medical school. I did not miss any of my tests. Everything stayed on time. I remained at top in my class. And then it was time for a bone marrow transplant, which back in 2001, so, you know, time had passed, undergoing the chemotherapy. This was 2001. And when you do a bone marrow transplant, you're kind of back then like the girl in the bubble. And it was this hospital room that was at the top of the hospital, and it was like a circular unit. So you could look out and you could see other patients. My oncologist was fascinating. Like, he connected with each patient in their each unique individual way, because you're there for at least a month, maybe 2. You're there for a long, long time. He was okay with my classmates and professors bringing tests and study materials in so I could stay on top of my study materials. He surprised me by having a bicycle in my hospital room, as well as one that was out by the nurse's station. He said, "This is our secret. When everyone else is sleeping and no one sees you, you can sneak out." He goes, "I know you wake up at 4 a.m. I expect that you'll continue to do that. And you can ride that bike and watch the sun come up." And that's exactly what I did. It gives me chills. I get chills all the time. So I'd watch that sun come up, ride the bike 4 to 5 a.m. and then go back to my room, shower, and then study. So I kept my life normal. But this was what was fascinating, is I remember looking out and seeing those other people in the hospital room, and they were so sick. They were dying in an effort to stay alive, but I attained my vitality without pause. And I say that, like, quote unquote, every time I get interviewed. My existence was so heightened during this time. I did not really feel sick. When I look at pictures, holy cow, I look sick, but internally I didn't feel sick. It was like I had this exuberant life with just heightened existence. And, you know, if someone would see green grass, the grass wasn't just green for me. It was just this remarkable color of green, and all my senses were just so heightened. It was truly a beautiful experience, a true teacher of life. And so they were wrong. The stage 4 cancer was cured. And a few months, I guess it was a few years later, so come 2022, my husband and I found out the miracle of growing our family. I was pregnant. Amazing. So this is 2003 that I was able to give birth to my daughter, Sophia.
Wow. So Dawn, back up for just a moment. When you were going through chemo, you know, you made the point that you exercised and you kept this great attitude. What kept you going? What do you attribute that? You know, you didn't just survive chemo, you smacked it in the face and said, "Hey, I'm not going to feel bad. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to beat this thing." What do you attribute that to?
You know, it's acceptance. Resisting what I was given wasn't going to help matters. It would have just made me miserable. So I accepted it. And we can take 2 paths with adversity. One is post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, you can go down that whole path of psychology where you experience overwhelm and anxiety and depression, and it's very easy to fall culprit to that. Or you can just look at what's being handed to you and trust it, surrender to it, accept it. I couldn't change it, so why would I fight it? And instead I thought, hey, I'm going to learn from this. And I'm so fortunate to have deep belief in God, deep belief in something bigger than yourself, in that trust. It was going to be okay. I don't know why what was happening was happening, but it was perhaps a lesson in life, and it sure was. So I would just answer that by one word, is saying acceptance, graceful acceptance, gentle acceptance without turbulence. And this is an interesting pearl for everyone out there who is struggling with healthcare adversity, and they're eating the perfect diet and they're exercising perfectly. If you're doing that in a turbulent way because you're terrified of your illness, I don't know that that's the goal. I want patients to take on the nutrition as something that they love, that they're trying to align with their body and in a harmonious way, and feed it and nourish it and love it by the healthy food you're using, by moving your body, because it's so good to kind of use up some of that stress and adrenaline with exercise. getting good sleep, avoiding toxic exposures, things like tobacco and alcohol, and then love, connections, horizontal connections with one another, but vertical connections and belief in something bigger than ourselves, and that spiritual growth. We talk so much about, oh, I need to go to the gym, I need to strengthen my core. And we really need to think about kind of strengthening that spiritual core and really working on that concept of deep belief, purpose, and meaning in life. And that is what really brought me through. And I had a lot of curiosity. I'm not sure why I was so curious about about spirituality very young in my life, but I was. During my chemo and bone marrow transplant, I read books from Bernie Siegel, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and even some of those various authors I read in years leading up to my cancer diagnosis. So it was like I was well prepared for this. My whole path and journey in life prepared me to be the perfect patient, and I wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
I did.
So you accepted it. You said, it's not about what happened to me, but what I choose to be. And that's great. And the other part of the post-traumatic stress is the post-traumatic growth that you've talked about before.
That's exactly right. Using that adversity as a springboard of life to grow into, something more full than we ever thought we can be. And the ability it offers you to connect with other people who have walked a similar journey is really quite beautiful. So,
yeah. So take us now. You just gave birth to a baby girl in 2003, Sophia, right?
Oh, yeah. You know what? She's going to be 21 in 2 days.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I know. While we're talking, she's texting me, by the way. So I turned the phone over now, later. I'll get back to you later, honey. So, yes, gave birth to my beautiful baby girl in 2003. And I remember how hard the delivery was. And all I know is I remember thinking, well, cancer was easy. That transplant was easy, because this childbirth thing, I don't know why cancer patients think they got it so rough, because every mom to deliver a baby, that's tough stuff. It was so hard. There's a little reason why I didn't know, though. I mean, it was really challenging. I could not hardly breathe. I felt like I was suffocating. I was so short of breath. My oxygen saturations were going down. I ended up having a major hemorrhage after my daughter was delivered. So there was just a lot of complications with her delivery. And then a few weeks after she was born, I started not to feel well again. And it was the same exact symptoms as I had when I had the cancer diagnosis. Couldn't walk 10 feet. And I thought, this is terrible. What's going on? Only now the complete narrative shifted. Now it was just about me and my medical school, and I could be selfish and exercise. Now I'm a mom, and I have a husband. I have all these responsibilities. I was terrified. So I didn't want to tell anyone. Fortunately, my mom was staying with me because of the complications that happened after the childbirth. And I couldn't even hold Sophia. My mom would have to bathe her. And then this one day came along in 2003 that I was ready to collapse. They took me to the hospital, and I was in cardiogenic shock again. Only this time my ejection fraction was 8%. And I was in advanced heart failure. And the medical team in this community hospital in Florida came in and said, you're going to need an urgent heart transplant. And this was, however many years ago that was. So 21 years ago.
About 20, yeah.
Yeah. So this is when I became a patient at Mayo Clinic. I had an evaluation at Mayo Clinic. The small community hospital said, you need to be evaluated there. And the doctors at Mayo Clinic just filled my heart with hope, literally. They said, hey, we're going to use medicines. You're going to get to cardiac rehab. And when those don't work, there'll be procedures we do. When the procedures don't work, you may need a heart transplant, but let's not worry about that. Let's stay in the present. We're going to start with medications. We think you'll start to feel better, especially with how motivated you are to exercise. And that's what I did. So took the medications, did the cardiac rehab, got stronger, went back, finished medical school at the Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville area, went on to residency at Mayo Clinic, continued to actually do pretty darn good. So this was 2003 up till 2007. And heart failure is a really hard disease for anyone, but it is a really tough disease for young people. I remember saying I was like shackled. It was like this such effort to live. Everything was so challenging. Now in retrospect, I didn't I didn't put that into my mindset because I just wanted to experience my aliveness with my daughter and my family. So I didn't really get burdened by how hard life was, but it was really challenging. And come 2007, I just couldn't do residency anymore and that hard work schedule. So I had to take time off. The doctor said, your numbers look bad. You need time off. And they did a procedure called a biventricular pacer, and they put a defibrillator in. This was still kind of, we didn't know about defibrillators as much as we do now. So that's when the defibrillator was in 2007. And it didn't really help. So I continued to be off of work. And then actually the hardest thing in my life happened in 2008. When I was off of work because my heart was not doing well. Had a very big family in Jacksonville, Florida. And on the weekends, every Friday or Saturday, we'd have a big family dinner. We would go out to eat and we would just celebrate, our togetherness. And it was just really beautiful, about 20 people. It's such a beautiful family. And after dinner this one night, my husband said, honey, why don't you just sleep with the baby? I'm gonna just go to bed earlier tonight. So I said, okay. So he went to bed. I was with Sophia, woke up the next morning, was working on actually a PowerPoint presentation. I remember it to this day. It was on hyponatremia. I was doing some work at the free medical clinic downtown. They had asked me to do a talk to some of their staff. Even though I wasn't in the, I didn't have the strength or the endurance to work as a resident, I still wanted to kind of serve others. So I was still trying to do some volunteer work at a Volunteers in Medicine, it was called, in downtown Jacksonville. And so then Sophia woke up, it was about 7 o'clock, and she said, where's daddy? And I thought, this is weird. Usually he would wake up with me at 4 a.m. I'm always waking up at 4 a.m. And he wasn't awake. And then 8 o'clock rolled around, 9 o'clock rolled around, and it just didn't make sense. So I said, I'll go check on him, honey. And I went to check on him, and he had actually passed away in his sleep the night before, or at least many hours before. And, Mike, you asked me, or you had mentioned you were this happy child. And, I've been happy my whole life. And if anyone's ever been to Disney or these, places where they have these roller coaster rides that just drop, like that free fall machine, that is what happened to me. This joyful, blissful existence of there's this heightened vitality way up here, just free fall within seconds. And I was so flat for about a whole year after that. There was no highs. Beyond that, there was no lows. I never became depressed. I was just flat. I was numb. I couldn't listen to music. There couldn't be anything that would be too much of a sensory perception because I just didn't know how to respond to it. It was so peculiar. I wish I understood it. And this is, I do plan to write a book one day. And this will be the chapters that will help women who lose their spouses, especially at a young age, the most. Loss is so hard. And it is the persistence of love. Our grief when you lose someone is the persistence of this beautiful love and connection that you had with someone. And that's what I really tried to keep close to my heart. And I grew even deeper in my faith with God because I had to. I mean, there had to be a knowing that my husband was in heaven and that he was safe. And so I became very strong in my faith of following my husband's death. And, there is such transformative power of any adversity, grief, suffering, loss, pain, no matter what it is, we can grow from this. It doesn't have to just merely be coping with whatever that hardship is, but you can really transcend into this powerful life of renewal. And that's exactly what happened. I had such profound transformative growth during this time. And I think I was 33. I was very young. Hardest part of everything I went through. I had a mentor that taught me something very good. And when I do talks, I have this beautiful picture of this heart. And what he said is, when the heart beats, it keeps 5% of the blood for itself before it can pump blood to the rest of the body. So we have to show up for ourselves. And that's what I did at this time. I was so used to serving the needs of others, always doing things, but I knew I had to show up for myself during this time and to be there for Sophia as well. But this analogy of the heart is really important because 95% of what the heart does is it serving the needs of the body or it's serving the needs of others. And that's my mission today, is to be there for others. It gives me chills again. I keep on getting chills. I love this. It's so good. It's all those anti-cancer hormones are great, right? Oh, it's so terrific. I always check with my patients, did that give you chills? Because it gave me chills. We need to cultivate lots of chills. It's a good thing. So anyways, learning to show up for myself during this time was very, very important. And something very miraculous happened. So I had that biventricular pacer placed in 2007, didn't get any better. My husband passed away in 2008. took a whole year for me to really see the light of day, but knew I had to stay strong for Sophia. And then around 2009, I started getting stronger. It's crazy. Like, it was like, whoa, like going up these stairs is kind of easy. Why? I'd go down them and go back up. I'm like, whoa, this is like really cool. So I went and saw my doctors. I'm like, I think things are better. You do an ultrasound. And sure enough, it's like 32%. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow.
I think things are working. This is like crazy. I have chills again, by the way. And so it kept on getting better. So I went back, finished residency, did a fellowship in hospital medicine, and became a hospitalist at Mayo Clinic with this crazy schedule. Like I would work 21 days in a row with call. I was like a superwoman. It's like, girl on fire. You know, I felt amazing. And it was so cool to be a hospital doctor at Mayo Clinic because I had been through a lot, you know, and so I could really connect with the patients, but it was kind of interesting. Even though I wasn't doing lifestyle medicine then, I would always counsel patients on the importance, you know, you can do this, you can do that. They all say, hey, are you a primary care doctor? I'm like, no, I'm just in the hospital. I don't want to see you again, but I want you to take better care of yourself. So I love this ability to try to get people a little better. And I had very low readmission rates because of that, because I would try to give them a little bit of love about eating healthier and moving their body more after discharge. And they like that. They like that someone would pay attention to something preventive. But then again, how heart failure is kind of these ups and downs. And so 2015, yeah, too much. My colleague saw it. And it was just like, timing was great. The leadership team at Mayo Clinic said, you know, we would love for you to come and redesign the breast center, the intake clinic, where we first diagnose women with their breast cancer. They go on to medical oncology, and then they come back in their survivorship year. So it's this whole continuum of care. It's a beautiful platform of practice for women with breast cancer. And I said, I would love that. The timing is perfect. And in fact, I would love to start an integrative medicine and breast health program if you would let me. And so this was it. This is where I designed the integrative medicine and breast health program, built on a foundation of lifestyle medicine with whole food, plant-based nutrition, movement, including spirituality, purposeful living, and then of course, using some integrative modalities that are evidence-based like acupuncture and mind-body therapies. And I even use some homeopathy in my with my patients, not a lot, but occasionally. So a really cool practice. So then the program was very successful. And after a year, I was given the opportunity to present to institutional leaders about, hey, this is a successful program. Look at all these outcomes, both financially as well as clinically. We were seeing great results. September 22nd, 2016 was one of the top 3 most impactful days of my life. And I remember this day so significantly because I was supposed to present at noon to this big group of leadership team at Mayo Clinic. And I was running a little bit behind for my patients because I love my patients. And so I would actually rather be with my patients than in a boardroom presenting this success of this program. But it was important because I knew I wanted to expand this program. So I get to the stairs, and as I'm going down the stairs, my legs were quivering. They were very weak, and I didn't know why. And as a doctor, as anyone, you go through, hey, did I eat breakfast? Yeah. Did I drink too much coffee? Yeah, definitely. I probably had too much coffee. Did you sleep last night? Probably not as much as you should have. You know, so I kept on going down the stairs, and I thought I was going to collapse. I mean, I have this common theme of collapsing, it seems. And as I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was just pooped. I thought, holy cow, how am I going to pull this off? So I hastily run, walk fast to the boardroom, could barely open up the door. So I'm trying to open up the door to the boardroom, and a woman inside opens it, and she's like, we've been waiting for you. You're late. I'm thinking, oh, sorry, I don't feel good, but keep going. So I walk in the boardroom, surrounded by these individuals, dark suits, ties, very formal, very serious. And I usually would say something very lighthearted to kind of break the mood in the room, send some love, but I was like, sit. So I sat, took the mouse. The PowerPoint presentation was the opposite end of the room. And for any of you that everyone's done this, you try to control the mouse with the cursor at a far distance screen. I couldn't do it. Even the mouse felt heavy. I'm like, this is so weird. And so this cursor starts getting more and more faded. And then that was my last conscious memory. And so basically, I had a 4-minute near-death experience. And it's hard to really truly describe what this felt like. What I would say is that I was in a place of complete quietude. Again, that theme of acceptance. there was total acceptance of the complete unknowing. I just had this certainty that where I was at was safe. And I remember very clearly the feeling of being like enveloped in love. And it was if the hands of God were holding me. My body was floating is what I remember feeling. And I remember this slight breeze. There's still like this like little level of awareness. It's so hard to describe. It was such a beautiful moment, so very peaceful. But I remember one single piece of hair kind of getting stuck in my lipstick and this cool breeze that was kind of just going over my body in the moment. But it was very, very beautiful. And I remember I was in no hurry to come back. And so, what I would say is it was just like this near-death experience really connected my non-beating heart direct to this very hopeful soul. And I would say I was like, in a way, more alive in this moment of what we clinically call death than anyone will ever experience in a lifetime. It was so fascinating. But the rhythm strips, because they were able to download it from my defibrillator, were in a complete flat line. So it was more or less like an asystole. The heart muscle had gotten so weak at that point that it couldn't even properly do like a fibrillation with spikes. So the defibrillator was not able to properly shock it. But then there was this huge wave of energy that came through my body. And it was actually preceded by this huge thump. Like I remember as it was coming back to consciousness, there was this huge thump and it literally like popped me up on my bottom. Like that was so powerful. I'm a very petite woman. And it was my defibrillator. It was shock after shock. There was no return of life until this one shock. And the electrophysiologist at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, an amazing soul, Dr. Sam Ajurvatham, he does not feel that it was really the defibrillator that saved my life. He said, I don't think that shock is what pulled you out of an essential fine defibrillator systole. So it doesn't matter how I came back to life. It was great that I had a defibrillator. Everyone with heart failure, with an advanced heart failure like I had, should definitely have a defibrillator. But the beautiful thing is I survived. And I just remember that power of that experience. And I describe it as like this mystic. I mean, it's just so fascinating, miraculous. And you just really can't verbalize the reality of this truly immense power. But I was alive and life got really hard. It didn't get better from that moment in 2016 all the way up to 2019. And, they kept on trying different procedure after procedure. I would bounce between Mayo, Florida and Mayo, Rochester, just to see every expert that would have a different idea or a different test to try to save my life. And we really wanted to wait for heart transplant because we knew it would be a very complicated transplant, knowing that I had had all that radiation in the past. So the last procedure that I did was in 2019 and actually caused me to have a stroke and I lost vision in my left eye. Fortunately, some of that vision has come back, but it just got that complicated. So in 2019, I was listed for heart transplant. And, the crazy thing was, I was on the list for 12 months as an outpatient. And that's when COVID actually hit, was during that time. So there was this whole concern that once you come in the hospital because of COVID, you can't have visitors. My daughter was a senior in high school. It was kind of like, how do you do this? So I wasn't doing too much. I was working from home at the time, able to keep my purpose a little bit there with telehealth. And, I just waited. And then come December of 2020, I got too sick to safely be at home anymore. So they admitted me to the hospital for supportive care. And I remained in the hospital until February 5th, 2021, when they found a matching heart. And that was fascinating. I mean, just so fascinating. And I remember the day very clearly because they would allow my daughter to come up and visit me. And she just had to make sure that she washed her hands and had to wear a mask, double mask, all these crazy infection precautions. But she came to have dinner with me on this night. And my surgeon, or one of the heart doctors, Dr. Patel, was actually at the nurse's station. I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, someone's getting their heart. This is so cool. And then after my daughter left, he said, can I talk to you? And so he came in my room. I remember he sat at the head of my bed. And you would think, after I had heart failure for 18 years, you would think I would be so excited. Like, I'm finally going to get my life back. I'm getting a heart, but you're not. All this stuff went through my mind. Another family is losing their loved one in an effort for me to be alive. And then what about this memory of the heart? The heart holds memories. Am I going to lose all those loving memories of my husband who died, of my beautiful childhood, my daughter being a little girl? Will life change? And our words are so powerful. And I had a psychiatrist who's a dear friend of mine weeks before my transplant come up to me and say, do you even want a transplant? What if your personality changes? And I thought, oh, that's not what you should say to your colleagues or a patient or anyone. I have no control over this. But that was going through my mind. Would my personality change? As all this stuff's going through my mind, my doctor said, Dawn, I have to tell you one more thing. Your donor is an IV drug user with hepatitis C. And I thought, oh, I've had so much in life. Why couldn't I get like a marathon heart? Or I don't know. Like, you're an evil person. I'm like, no, you're asking for a certain perfect heart. Don't do this, right? So I just said I have to think about this, because if you take an IV drug user heart, you can get HIV. There's a lot of other risks to it. So it's a very high risk donor. And Mayo Clinic is one of the few institutions that actually will transplant a hepatitis C heart because of these complications. We're also a liver transplant center, so they're comfortable transplanting you with the heart in case something happens with the liver, they got you. So within a few hours, I had this complete knowing that this was the right heart for me. It was very interesting, but I thought to myself, wow, like I've had this perfect life, and who am I to judge why she did drugs? I don't know why she did drugs, and so I'm not going to judge. And all of a sudden, it just seemed like such a gift that I would be able to give this heart this miraculous life that I live, and just this love and harmony. So I went down, it was time for the surgery. I remember having eye contact with my surgeon, and it was just like this complete knowing that everything was going to be okay, that in a few days I would wake up to the beat of my new heart. Before any other surgery, I would go under anesthesia and pray like, oh my gosh, please let me live. Please let me live. There was none of that. I was confident everything was going to be fine. I just remember giving gratitude and praying for my donor and donor family, and just being so grateful that they are giving me this chance at life. And so I went under anesthesia. There were some complications. I had to go back to the operating room, actually. They had to reopen me up a day later. It took me a few days to wake up. So this is the third of one of the top 3 experiences in my life. And so when I woke up, there was this harmonious sound. And it was my hair that was brushing on the crisp white sheets. And it was in sync with the powerful beat of my new heart. And I say this almost like the exact same way every time someone interviews me, but this is exactly how it felt in this order. And my body was warm for the first time in 18 years. Like, when you have heart failure, you're freezing cold, like everything feels cold. You have no perfusion. I was warm. And then I had total clarity of thought, despite going through this crazy surgery and then this really scary complication. My brain was like, whoa, it's like working. Watch out, world. She's going to come with lots of ideas. Yep. That's exactly what I'm doing. And then it was like my energy. It was just like this, my energy. It's just like every cell in my body was oscillating this super high energy. And I haven't lost that. It's cool. Like, I just love my life. I love being in my body, and I love this heart. And so you're on a lot of medicines during and after transplant. And some of those medicines are really high dose steroids. And so a few days after I woke up from transplant, I got angry. I was like, why did I get this IV drug user heart? Like, it just wasn't me, like, just mean. Like, I don't have a mean bone in my body. That may have been the only time in my life I was ever mean. But it was on the same day they told me that my virus, the hepatitis C numbers were way high. And my insurance company just told me, we're not going to approve that medicine until she goes home. And the medical team's like, you're not going home for several weeks. And I'm thinking,
Oh, no.
I have hepatitis C, guys. You don't want to touch me. Don't touch my blood. You may get hepatitis. I'm like, you need to figure this out. So I'm like all irritated, right? So I go to bed and I'm, irritated, just so unlike me. I'm like, so this is what irritability feels like. I love everything I've gone through because I even know what that feels like now. And it's not nice. It doesn't feel good. So I really try to help people work through that when they experience that. And I had this dream, and I had this amazing dream. It was more like a sensory experience. And I woke up in this dwelling place, a concrete brick building. And, I remember in this dwelling place that there was a window, and I went to the window. There was no car there, there was a chair behind me. I went to see if my purse was there. My purse wasn't there, but there was a door. So I remember kind of crawling out this door. And in this dream, there were these long blades of grass. And this is how I describe it, was more like a sensory experience. is as I'm crawling through this grass, as kids, or even now when you walk in tall grass, you know how the grass kind of grabs your leg almost like it's sticky. That's exactly what was happening. So, nonetheless, I flip over and there's these beautiful clouds going overhead and these people in the distance, just in this blissful way of being, happiness, joy. And in this moment, this word came over me and it said grace, which was very powerful. And I woke up, and when I was in the hospital, I would always listen to instrumental music. And in this very moment, the exact instrumental song at that time that was playing was titled Grace. And so I couldn't sleep. So I opened up my email, and the email waiting for me was titled Full of Grace. So it's very powerful. And so, grace is just really truly a divine influence that's in each and every one of us. And it's just to regenerate, to inspire virtue, and really to impart strength during trial. And so I named my heart Grace. And, so I went on and I wanted to do something remarkable with this amazing gift that I was given, this heart. And so I told my friends I wanted to run a marathon one year from transplant, and they all thought I was crazy, but I thought, well, I think I could do it, especially with the right lifestyle approach to care. And so it was kind of metaphorical for life, right? It's like feet on the ground, heart is big as the world. And so it happened. So on my 1-year heart transplant anniversary, I ran the Donna Marathon to end breast cancer for my patients. And it was the very marathon I had volunteered at for many years in honor and support of my patients when I couldn't run. And so I had always wanted to run that marathon. And I wish I had the picture, but it was really cool because at the finish line, you can't make this stuff up. There was a huge construction sign, and the name of the construction company was Grace. And it was right at the finish line. So it's really cool. And it was also interesting. My number was 365, and they didn't plan it. And it was 365 days after my transplant. So, from that day forward, we've organized 5Ks with our patients. We have the next one. This is with part of the Donna Marathon, and they do 5Ks throughout the year. So there's one for Mother's Day. So a group of breast cancer patients at Mayo Clinic, we're going to walk it together. Some will run it together. So it's really special to do these, coordinated events. But I would say there was a lot that went into the ability to run the marathon and to kind of get through a lot of that hardship. A large portion of that is lifestyle, and then kind of this little bit of grittiness. And, I really worked at kind of reframing. There's kind of like this little recipe of 3 things. One is reframing and just changing the script on cancer and heart failure and making it a teacher of life, like I had mentioned. And the second was just gratitude. It takes us from a place of deficit to abundance. And that's so important, just to be grateful. I was so grateful for my donor, for the amazing medical team at Mayo Clinic, for my loving family, for my colleagues, and for my deep belief in God. And the last part of it is amor fati, which is a Latin word for love of one's fate. And I love everything I've had to go through. It's taught me so much about the sacredness of life, and I celebrate my aliveness each and every day. And, the whole food plant-based nutrition for me is such a joy, because since I love my life so much, it's how I can give back to my life and to nourish my life. And it's so special when I can work in that space with my patients too, because I see the hope that it gives to them. So I feel like I've talked a lot. I'm going to be quiet right now, and maybe we could take some questions, or if there's any other parts of that.
We like when you talk, Dawn. It's good. It's all good,
Oh.
and it's an amazing story. One that I see people that have the poor me attitude, and yours is 180 degrees the other direction. It's like, I accept it, and I'm not going to let it get me down. And it's just amazing. And I see the pillars of health coming through in your story. You made good choices. You chose to have this attitude. Maybe you didn't get the sleep that you needed all the time, but you knew it, right? You knew it. And, your exercise has always been a part of your life. And you exercised during chemotherapy. I mean, most people just, try to get through it, and you're exercising during chemotherapy. The trust in a higher power came through as well. Your social connections, your interpersonal connections were there. And one of the greatest things is your outlook, your attitude. You said, I'm going to be an optimist. I'm going to, make a choice to have that attitude. And then I see the nutrition as a basis of all this. The nutrition that started when you were a little girl. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, back on those days, you're not very old, but back in those days, nutrition, particularly whole food, plant-based, it wasn't very popular. So absolutely amazing story. And yeah, grittiness is a good word to describe you. You're gritty. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
So
it's been
thank you
quite
for
the
that.
journey.
So,
Yeah, you're welcome.
Natasha, do you want to come in and share some questions? I know there are many questions that our audience may have. So Dawn is ready and willing to answer those questions, right, Dawn?
Yeah, I love talking. I'll answer questions. Oh, you're on mute. I'll tell you the funniest question someone ever asked me. The funniest question was, what is your favorite unhealthy food? And I was on a big stage and I was like, I don't have one. I said, can I tell you what my favorite healthy food is? I was like, it's purple sweet potatoes and dates. Yeah, it's funny. And Anne's Warrior Oats. Those are my favorite too. So I said, those are my three things. So if I'm dying tomorrow, that's what I want to eat. And I actually told a man the other day in Whole Foods, we were looking at sweet potatoes. I'm like, oh, take one of these. These are great. These are purple inside. You're going to love them. They're my favorite food. I said, yeah. So I don't really have a favorite unhealthy food. It's always a healthy
Well,
one.
that's good. That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're just going to start with how old are you? People want to know how old you are. So let's just ask that first.
Yeah, I'm 50. I just turned 50 this March. It's amazing. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
We need more 50-year-olds that have your story.
Well, I'm 50, but I have a 31-year-old heart. She was 28 when I got her, so 31-year-old heart.
Yeah.
31 going on 50.
I actually have a question before Natasha's. Had you run a marathon with your old heart in the past?
I didn't. Back then, running wasn't like it is today. Running is really a structured recreational activity that people are involved in. And I went kind of straight from undergrad to research to medical school that I never had proper time to train, but I always wanted to.
Yeah.
I would have. I mean, that was kind of one of the things I had hoped to do in medical school, but so I had to do it. I had to do it more recent with a younger heart.
Makes it even more amazing, really. All you and your body went through, and then you run 20, I mean, just amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty exhilarating, I'll say. And then I ran a total of 7 marathon distant runs since that time. 4 official marathons. And I always run a marathon before the marathon. Doesn't make sense.
Practice one.
Yeah, Mayo Clinic wanted to make sure they had doctors running with me on that first try. So I actually ran a full marathon 10 months from transplant. That's the truth.
Wow.
Crazy. They wanted him. They had eyes on me. They had doctors watching me. They're like, we don't want him. I'm like, thanks. I'm going to be fine. So yeah, I did good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what were those 3 healthy foods again? Someone's asking you to repeat them, please.
So my favorite 3 healthy foods would be number 1, all-time favorite are the Stokes purple sweet potatoes. And
I say go for that. I love them.
Oh, they're so good. I had 2 yesterday. I'm out of them today, so I haven't had one today. My second favorite food is probably, I'd have to say, dates. I love dates, and I love taking a date and putting a walnut in the middle.
Yes.
It's so good. It's like this, so good. Yes. So I love that. And then like there's so many favorite things. I just love healthy food. I love fennel, fresh fennel cut up. Oh, this is so cute. If you cut fresh fennel up, sometimes you'll have the shape of a heart when you cut the stalk and you look at it in your hand. It's a shape of a heart. It's very precious. But Anne's Warrior Oats is one of my favorite. I love oatmeal, but I love the savory oats. So I love that. And I put a few cans of beans in there for extra protein. So
yeah. She's referring to Ann Esselstyn's oats.
Yeah, Anne's Warrior Oats. It's in that Be a Plant-Based Woman Warrior cookbook. I really enjoy those. They're delicious.
So another question, and first of all, people want to buy your book when it comes out. I know you haven't written it yet, but people are lining up to buy it. And then the movie deal will follow, but people want to see and read the book first, just so you know. Did heart disease run in your family, Dawn?
No, in fact, my heart failure was a result of the fact that tumor was wrapped around my heart and they had to do radiation right to the heart. That was a big part of why I needed the transplant. Now, I had multiple issues with my heart related to my cancer treatment. There was like kind of 3 different phases. I went through these different changes. That maybe why I had these kind of bumps, those ebbs and flows. I had a dilated cardiomyopathy initially from the chemotherapy. But the thought was maybe that actually got better. But as that got better, the scar damage from the radiation happened. And that's when I started having these fatal arrhythmias with the ventricular tachycardia that was happening often. And then just that ventricular fibrillation and then that ultimate cardiac arrest. Great question though, but no family history. I don't know many heart failure patients that live 18 years, honestly, especially with how my heart was. And so it's really incredibly exciting. So Mayo Clinic, they have my heart, my original heart, and they were able to do research on that to try to find genes that would be linked to dilated cardiomyopathy. And they were finding just tremendous genetic signaling in that research. So a few weeks ago, I went back to Mayo because they wanted to draw some blood. This is fascinating. It's like a sci-fi movie. So they drew my blood. They took out what are called the progenitor stem cells. And now they're reprogramming those cells to become heart cells that will be beating in the dish anytime. So it's like a historic moment. This has never been done before, where they're growing those cells and they'll be able to learn what patients we need to take extra precautions or what patients we need to avoid giving them these certain therapies because they would end up with some of the complications I ended up with, which is very unusual to see that. Most cardiomyopathies from chemo and some of the HER2 guided like breast cancer treatments, they recover and we watch them so closely. It's a whole field of cancer care now, cardio oncology. Back when I had it, I mean, honestly, I would have died without the chemo. So I would have died, and one can say, how do you know that? Well, I was actively dying when the tumor was so big. There was no way to get rid of that tumor how it was, except for with the chemo and radiation. So, and I'm here. I haven't missed a beat. I feel great. I feel like I'm the healthiest woman alive. It's all good. It all worked out.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So to follow that up, did breast cancer run in your family? And did you go through any genetic counseling?
Great question. So I had diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. I did not have breast cancer, but after all of these treatments, there was a breast cancer concern. This was actually within the past 8 months, and they couldn't do a biopsy. And I'm at a very high risk from the radiation. There's suggestion that it's the same risk as a BRCA or a BRCA gene carrier. So the decision was made with the medical team that I had to do a prophylactic mastectomy 8 months ago. So I did do that surgery. And fortunately, what they saw on the MRI was not cancer. So I was very fortunate for that. But I do have a family history of breast cancer. My grandmother actually had metastatic breast cancer. And so that was part of why I was such at a very high risk of breast cancer as well. But there's no gene that we know of that is positive in my family history at this time. And that's true for many breast cancers. 5 to 10% of breast cancers are genetic. Another 5 to 10% are family history that we don't know the gene. So guess what? 75 to 80% of breast cancers are because we're women, we're getting older, and lifestyle. We know 33% of breast cancers don't have to happen if women lived healthier lives. And there are some expert reports that say, hey, if we lived healthier earlier on, when we're pregnant with our babies, like let's not feed ourselves ultra processed food. When we're kids, let's be cautious with this stuff. Let's consider having soy at young ages. Like the Asian countries, we see this decrease in breast cancer. Green tea, green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, high fiber diets, move the body, avoid alcohol. Young girls drink alcohol at such young ages now when that breast tissue is developing. That is a huge risk factor for breast cancer. So all of these healthy living strategies, when I have women coming in to see me and they say, I really want to live healthy, but my kids aren't going to want to. I say, whoa. We want the whole family to be healthy. This is about all of us. And this is going to be part of something that they can have control and watch mom show up for herself, like the heart, show up for yourself. So it's an important learning tool. There was just a very scary study that showed that mono and diglycerides increases the risk of breast cancer by 24%. It's worse for men. Increases risk of prostate cancer by 46%. I mean, those numbers are hard to digest. We know the ultra processed food increases breast cancer mortality by 16% and ovarian cancer mortality by 30%. These are numbers that kind of make me uneasy. They make you sick, So the number one thing I really like to counsel patients on is whole food. Get rid of the fake food. Any food that you couldn't otherwise bring, ingredients, I should say, that you couldn't otherwise bring into your home, don't. Leave them at home. Look at Centers for Nutrition Studies recipes and start using those. They're amazing. The hummus recipes, By the way, the edamame hummus recipe that you make, or the recipe you have in your recipe link, is one that we make for all of our breast cancer retreats. Because we want women to know that soy does not increase the risk of breast cancer. It's very safe. In the newest data, the American Cancer Society had a nice review on soy, 3 paragraphs dedicated their 2022 article that showed that those breast cancer survivors with more versus less soy had a 25% reduced risk of breast cancer coming back. So soy is safe. It's a wonderful source of plant protein, and your edamame hummus is a great way to get that. So I love that. Shout out to you guys.
So let's continue on women taking care of themselves as a really good preventative measure. So someone is asking, what is your personal daily self-care routine? And what do you say to women who are struggling, to find time for self-care?
Yeah. So if you don't show up for your well care, you're going to show up for your sick care, because I see women do it all the time. So you've got to prioritize yourself. I wake up at 4 a.m. I do not have a TV in my house. And I am on social media a little bit, but lately I've really pulled back because I've been more busy at work. So, I think a lot of people watch a lot of TV. I love not having a TV. It's so nice because it gives me the opportunity to do more self-care things. So I wake up at 4 a.m. I love rituals. I'm not a good faster. I'm terrible at fasting because I want my coffee as soon as I put my feet on the ground with soy milk. I love it. So I heat my soy milk up, put my hot coffee on top. It's so enjoyable. And I start my work actually at 4 a.m., but I love my work. My work is my purpose, and that is part of why I had such fight. I don't know. I don't think I like that word fight, but grittiness. That sounds nicer. Let's use grittiness. Yeah. I had that. I wanted to push through because that purpose of being there for others, serving others, delivering that original medicine through that lens of love for humanity. I've said that before too, is I just love people and I want to be there to help them. So waking up at 4 a.m. for me to work isn't really work. It's my passion and my love and my joy, and it's lifestyle medicine. It's what I wanted to do since I was 4 years old. And then I will either work out in the morning if my schedule allows me to, depending on meetings, or I'll work out in the evening, but I prefer the morning. So once the sun comes up, I prefer to run. And so I'll either go run or I'll do like a hot yoga class. I do like hot yoga as well, but I prefer to run. So I usually go run 45 minutes to 60 minutes, unless I'm training for a marathon, it may be a little bit longer. And then I start my patient day at 9 a.m. and then I work through, I usually have meetings at lunch, and then I work all the way through until about 5:30 or 6 p.m. I see patients late. And then I really shut it down. I don't usually check my in basket at the end of my day. When I'm done with my day, because I wake up at 4 a.m., I'm done with my day. And so then I, may run up to Whole Foods or whatever grocery store and get fresh and cook a nice healthy meal. My daughter's in college now. So, it's kind of easy. Then usually come about 8 o'clock at night, I'll do some reading, or I'll listen to, something that's, based on spirituality, or I'll listen to a podcast on health and wellness, or I'll work on a presentation that I have going on. So that's typically my day, but I always find time for movement or exercise. And I always find time to prepare healthy food. I never miss a meal. I love food. I love eating breakfast. Like this morning, I had a very busy day today because my day today actually started earlier. It started at 7:45 with meetings. And I had a lunch meeting. I had patients all the way in between, right up until now, actually. So I knew I'd be in a hurry. So as I was kind of brushing my teeth, like doing everything at once, made oatmeal the night before. I always try to prepare. So I make overnight oats with soy milk, some flaxseed, tons of berries. I do tons of berries in that. And then for lunch, I had like a huge, like such a big bowl for a huge bowl of kale with garbanzo beans and radishes and this tangerine infused white vinaigrette. That was delicious. And then before this call, I knew between my 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock patient, I'd be hungry. So I took a bag of frozen squash. I threw it in my Vitamix and I let it thaw. And then once I was done with my last patient, I poured some soy milk in my Vitamix. I put some ginger in there and some garlic, and I put it on the soup setting. I went quickly and changed. I put on a nicer dress, you guys. And my soup was ready. It was hot. It was like piping hot. It was so yummy. And I only planned on eating half of it, but I ate the whole thing. So yeah, I really prioritize my healthy food, and I always make time. And for me, it's my joy. Food is medicine. And I also think food is love, and food is energy, on many levels. So when I kind of joke and I say that, gosh, my vibration, yeah, a lot of people kind of talk, I have such high vitality, and If I ate food from a factory, there's no vital energy in food from a factory. If you eat an animal, it's a dead animal. There's definitely no. So I think the food from nature, it's just really helps to energize me. I love how I feel with it. So, and I love sprouted food for that reason, because Ayurvedic teachings are ones that support that the sprouted food, of course, we know you have more bioavailability of all those amino acids and nutrients, but that sprouted food also may be also something that's very revitalizing. So I talk to my patients about that. They don't think I'm crazy. They kind of like it. I always say I may be a little crazy, but just try it. You may have too much energy. You have to cut back on that sprouted food.
So there is a physician in the audience that has a couple of questions for you. And the first one is really like, what would you say to family doctors and other doctors about nutrition, and particularly whole food plant-based lifestyle? Like how to get people excited about and embracing a whole food lifestyle? And then right along with that, what is your best argument against the ketogenic diet? You know, like what can you say to people? So this is someone that's really looking for, how do I have that conversation with other physicians?
It is so hard, right? And there are so many opinions out there. And here I kind of have this testimony. It's kind of like someone may say, oh gosh, that's an opinion. Well, I would love to invite anyone that wants to counter anything I just said to one of my academic presentations, where I'll give you a whole lot of research, because I love the research. I love the numbers. I love the statistics. So selfishly, because it makes my job easy, I love being in the breast cancer center where I can help women with breast cancer, because you know what, cancer, like I showed you, is a teacher of life, and every guideline says that is close to the cancer diagnosis, we need to give nutritional and exercise instruction to patients, and it can help empower them over their diagnosis, and they're ready for change right away. So I have like this incredible teaching moment. It's just like this platform for success. So I want you to know that when I have a patient who doesn't have breast cancer, maybe they're high risk breast cancer, or it's a favor from a colleague that just wants me to see a relative or a friend or someone. It's always very hard. It's always very hard to find out how that maneuver is going to go. So you have to find out why. This is however old that person is. It's that many years of change you're asking upon them. And food is culture. Again, that food is love. There's connection, there's emotion. And so you want to know why they want to change. If they don't want to change, it's kind of like a smoker. If someone's smoking and you tell them you need to quit and they're not ready to change, they're not going to quit. Tell them, yes, you should quit, but it's not going to work. So if someone's eating ultra processed food and it's 63% of their diet, like the majority of Americans, and they're happy doing that, you're probably not going to change them, and giving them fear tactics isn't going to help. I just move on to the next patient. I think we lead by example, because I guarantee that person probably feels crummy. So you can kind of go in and try to figure out where the little levers would be that you can turn on to help them cultivate their why. And I would suggest that. And it's probably going to be that they're tired or fatigued, or, for women in menopause, a lot of them have a lot of issues that are related to menopause. And man, you can really transform a woman in that midlife, whether she's gaining weight and she has hot flashes, her libido is down. You can change all of that by eating healthier. So I work in that women's health space much easier, but I'm sure the same conversation could be had with men. So find that person's why. That's very important, and lead by example. I've had a lot of doctors speaking to large groups that they want to know how they do this. And then I don't judge, but I kind of see what they're eating. I'm like, well, you got to start with you. For a month and kind of flush out how you're going to answer those questions, because it is hard, right? It is hard when you have a family and how you're going to balance it, how you're going to grocery shop, how are you going to, batch cook on the weekends, and you got to have enthusiasm over it. You got to be excited to energize people. Like, man, I love this stuff. Like, it's contagious. Like, my patients leave being excited. They have no option. I'm like, no, you're not excited enough yet. We can't end this appointment. But no, in all seriousness, I do keep it real, because it's very overwhelming. And I let patients know, I check in with them during my visit. And I have a very long visit with my patients. Mayo Clinic respects the fact that I'm covering a lot of very sensitive, complicated subjects with my patients. And so my visits are 90 minutes. And I literally go from minute 0 to minute 90, and we're still really not done. Because we cover so much. We're covering their diagnosis, all of their symptoms, as well as onboarding with all the pillars of lifestyle medicine, and I even try to touch on purposeful living and spirituality. So as you can imagine, that's a long conversation. So I check in with the patients about this overwhelm. How are you doing? Are you feeling overwhelmed? It's very common. You know, I give them that validation, that reassurance. And if they say yes, or when they say yes, I said, that's great. Because it means something too. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's because you want to do this. And, you know, it's so exciting when I hear someone say, I am overwhelmed, but I'm going to work through it. I got a message today from a lady that said, it's a little overwhelming, but we're doing pretty good. It gives me chills. That's such good language. I get these cool messages from patients, and I see remarkable lifestyle changes, truly remarkable, dramatic weight loss in my patients with the whole food plant-based nutrition, no sugar, high fiber, and avoiding oil. Some of them like to spray olive oil on some of what they do. That's totally fine. Olive oil is not going to hurt you. It's just going to be hard to lose the weight that a lot of these women need and want to lose. So then the keto thing, you know, in the cancer environment, there was a beautiful review that was done by Irvi Shaw and Neil Einger on plant-based diet versus keto diet, like which one do we pay attention to? And their review clearly showed, they are both doctors at Memorial Sloan Kettering. This was just published with in 2022, this was published, and if I'm correct with that, 2022. And what the article showed is that yes, a whole food plant-based diet is the best diet to prevent cancer and to reduce metabolic syndrome in cancer survivors. The only area where there was this little niche that perhaps keto diet could be helpful because of the hyperinsulinemia seen and hyperglycemia seen is with Piqray. It's a particular sort of chemotherapy. And so if I have a woman on the Piqray, and I've had women sent to me to see them, I will put them on a keto sort of plant-based diet, but I'm very certain that their glycemic index is well monitored. Sometimes I use continuous glucose monitoring for that reason. Otherwise, when it comes to keto or carnivore diet, you know, there's just, those studies are usually very small numbers of people in the cohort. You know, I agree, we don't have the ability to do all randomized controlled trials, right? But I love what Dr. Colin Campbell says. He says, you know, correlation at this point with all the numbers and the data we have to date showing that a plant-based diet can prevent, treat, and reverse disease equals causation. I mean, there's millions of people if we look at the numbers, and the data keeps on coming out more and more and more as we sit here. It's super exciting to be in this space because my slides and talk, I always have more slides because there's so much research coming out. And so that's the call to action for all of us who are medical professionals, is get busy, get active, and start doing research to the best of your ability in this space, even if it's smaller studies. Neil Barnard in that study with soy and the hot flashes was a small study, but an incredible study to show a half a cup of edamame reduce moderate to severe hot flashes by 88%, and half of those women completely ameliorated their hot flashes. And I see exactly that in my clinic. I had a woman the other day that a doctor put her on gabapentin for her hot flashes. The woman was gaining weight and she was tired. I'm thinking, stop the gabapentin, just do soy. You know, you just got to keep to the basics, and you got to listen to the patient. You got to look at the person as a whole. It's just, lifestyle medicine is such easy medicine. It just really is. So I love my job. I said it a few times. I think it's true.
Well, I think that is a good place to end. I'd like to thank everyone for their questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we got to the majority of them. And thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to our host, Dr. Hollie.
Dawn, I'm speechless. You know, that was a beautiful, beautiful presentation and sharing from your heart. It really showed this is something that you have. To say you have a passion is, again, an understatement. So really, really appreciate that. I love your focus on prevention because I think in today's medicine, we're very reactive. You know, we just treat things. We need to learn. Breast cancer is a great example. You know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I think it should be Breast Cancer Prevention Month, and talk about all those things that you just shared to help women prevent breast cancer, and men prostate cancer, you know, all these things. So I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy schedule to share with our CNS audience, and those that missed it will get the replay. And so we'll look forward to that as well. So Dawn, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, it's my honor. Thanks, Mike. Thanks to Natasha. It was such a joy to be here this evening. I really appreciate your time. And thank you to the audience. They were really engaged. So that was really fun. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So on behalf of the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, we thank you for sharing your evening with us. Stay tuned. We're going to get another Spotlight in Health in June. So stay tuned. We'll get more information to you about that. So again, thank you very much to our guest tonight, Dr. Dawn Mussallem. Thank you again, Natasha, for your work. And we'll see you guys in the future.